You know what's terrifying? Some people don't know who they are outside their job. Take away the job title, the degrees, the achievement, the promotions, and suddenly they feel worthless. Not depressed, not disappointed, worthless. And that is what happens when your self-worth is attached to your career. And the alarming thing is, society actually encourages this. We praise people for their achievement, for overworking themselves, for burnout, for sacrificing themselves for their career. And even in some sense, we encourage children to choose who they want to be even before they know who they are. So in this video, I want to talk about how building your identity around your career is one of the most dangerous things you could ever do to yourself. From childhood, many of us were taught that your achievement equals your value. Getting good grades in school means that you're smart. Having a good job means you're successful. And a higher salary than others means you're more important. And slowly, without even realizing it, you start to think, if I achieve more, then I deserve more love, more respect, and more importance. And that is why most people tend to introduce themselves by their profession first. Something like, I'm a doctor, I'm a nurse, I am this, I am that. Because their occupation now becomes their identity. And this is very dangerous because careers are external things, they can change overnight. And so if your identity is built on something unstable, that also means that your self-worth becomes unstable as well. Another reason you should be careful about building your identity around your career is, according to science, when it comes to your brain, especially the prefrontal cortex, that is the part that is responsible for long-term decision making, judgment, impulse control, and identity formation, does not actually develop until you get to the age of, say, 25. And yet most of us choose a career at 15, 16, 17 when your brain was not even fully matured yet. So think about it. Imagine making one of the biggest decisions ever before your brain was even fully developed. So by the time many people finally understand themselves better, their personalities, their values, their interests, they are already deep into a career that they chose as teenagers. And for some people, that's when they realize, I actually don't like this career. I chose this for survival. I chose this to impress my parents. I chose this to impress my friends. I chose this career because it's respected, not because I like it. So why would you build your identity around a decision that was made by a younger, less matured version of you? A career simply needs to be something that earns you money or somewhere that you showcase your talents or your gifts. It shouldn't be your entire life, because humans evolve, your interests will change, your values will change, and your priorities will change as well. And that is completely normal. But what happens when your entire identity is trapped inside a career choice? Changing directions can feel like you're losing yourself. And that is why people stay miserable in careers that they hate, because leaving that job feels like an identity crisis, not a career transition. Your job should be flexible enough for you to change as you grow, and your identity shouldn't be imprisoned by a decision that your teenage self made. I need you to understand what happens when your entire identity is built on a career. The first thing is, every failure becomes catastrophic. When your self-worth is attached to your career, every rejection feels personal instead of professional. Whenever there is a problem with your job or your career, you don't think, well, I didn't get the promotion. You think, that means I'm a failure, I'm not good enough, and that's why I didn't get that promotion. And that's a very dangerous mindset. When something bad like losing a job, being unemployed, or even like failing at a business happens, people spiral into depression because they have built their entire identity around having a job or a business, and they have nothing outside of that. One of the reasons you must never tie your identity to your career is, careers can be unstable. You can't predict what's going to happen tomorrow. Companies lay off every single day, the economy can crash, or even some jobs can be taken over by technology. For instance, what AI is doing right now. You can work at a company for 20 years and they can replace you in 2 days. So if your identity is built around being needed by that company, what happens when they don't need you anymore? And this is why most people feel lost after retirement. They feel useless because no one needs them anymore. So if your identity is built around being needed, what happens when no one needs you? You will interpret that to mean that you are useless, because your identity is built around being found useful. The second thing that happens is, burnout becomes inevitable. If you build your value around being productive and doing something all the time, even finding time to rest is going to be a problem. You feel guilty for relaxing, for sleeping, for doing nothing, because deep down you believe that if I stop producing something, then I stop mattering to people. So in order for me to maintain my self-worth in front of people, I need to be doing something all the time. And this is why hustle culture is very dangerous. Hustle culture paints a picture where you need to be productive 24/7. But if you look closely, underneath all of that is the belief that you are only as good as what you do. Hustle culture has a way of romanticizing self-destruction. You see someone bragging about being exhausted or not sleeping enough like it's a badge of honor. Having 4 businesses, a podcast, an online store, this and that. That does not make you more important than someone that has only one job. You might be richer, but not more important. Your self-worth does not equal your net worth. The next thing is, your relationships will suffer. When work becomes your identity, every relationship in your life is going to pay for that. And interestingly, most men build their identity around being a provider. So they believe they're only useful when they provide. And that is why a loss of job or being unable to provide makes them feel like it's the end of the world. Because literally to them, it is the end of the world. And I believe that this is the root of family annihilation. When a man is unable to provide for the family and for some reason think that, I've lost control, so the next best thing is to murder everyone. You see how dangerous building identity around being able to provide can also be. In order to get to the root of this issue, I'm going to pose a question to you, and that is, who are you without your career? This is a question that most people cannot answer. Who are you when you're not achieving something? Who are you without your titles, your degrees, your achievements? Who are you when you are not being useful to other people? Do you believe that you deserve love on your worst day? Do you believe that you deserve love if you have no job? Do you believe you deserve love and respect even if you're not providing for anyone? Can you still value yourself even when you fail? Because that is the real self-worth, not building your identity on anything. A human life has value beyond productivity. A child has value even if they achieve nothing. A person is still valuable even after retirement. A sick person has value even if they are disabled and unable to walk. If you meet someone for the first time and you're asked to introduce yourself without mentioning your titles, your achievement, your profession, how would you introduce yourself? Who are you? Who are you outside of what you do? Now, I'll give you examples of people that tie their self-worth to their net worth. So whenever you see them, you are able to recognize that quickly. The first one is the high achiever when they lose everything. These are the people who commit suicide when they lose a job or fail at a business. These are the people who did everything right. They went to school, they got a degree, they got a high-paying job, but then one day they lost their job and that was everything. Perhaps the company downsized or the economy changed or they even got replaced by a person or technology. And suddenly to them, that is not losing a job, that is losing their entire identity. So they wake up feeling useless, ashamed, and even unable to tell people that they have no job. That is why most people fall into depression after they lose a job. It's not just about losing money, it's the fact that they have no idea who they are without this job that they lost. The second example is people that are rich but live empty lives. These are the people who are successful and have the money. They have big salaries, they have the status, they live an enviable lifestyle. On paper, they are successful, but internally, they feel empty and lost. And that's because they have spent years chasing all these external things, the validation, the promotion, the money, without ever building an internal self-worth. So they find out that even after achieving everything, it's still not enough, there is something missing. So what happens is they keep chasing for more because to them, their self-worth is tied to having more or doing more. And this is why when you go close to people that are very successful, you find out that some of them still struggle with anxiety, depression, or even like low self-esteem. It's the fact that they have all these external things and they never had time to build something internal that keeps them grounded. The final example is people that go into identity crisis after retirement. I'm talking about those that have had a career for 30, 40 years and suddenly they retire and feel like they are useless to everyone. But that's because the job is not just what they do, it's who they are. So when they retire and have no job anymore, they feel useless, and sometimes you see them trying to go back to that job to even work for free because that is all they've ever known. I've actually seen people retire and come back to the workplace begging to just work without pay. How crazy is that? If you build your identity around having a job, what happens when that job is gone? What happens when you retire? Who are you after retirement? Do you have hobbies? Do you have things to enjoy? Or are you the person that's going to go back to a job begging to work for free because that's all you've known? We even see this in celebrities. They reach the pinnacle of their career and for some reasons they are struggling with drug addiction, depression, anxiety and all. And that's because this person has built their identity around whatever made them a celebrity and they never really discovered themselves. So all they have is tied to this being a celebrity, and if anything happens to that status and for some reason people don't check on them anymore, they feel like it's the end of the world because all they've ever known is being a celebrity and being celebrated by others, but they have nothing that keeps them grounded in themselves. So when you're told to get a job, have a career, achieve more, it's not necessarily a bad advice, but what they don't tell you is if you don't build your self-esteem alongside your success, you will never feel like you're successful because losing that success feels like losing yourself. When you're growing in your career or in your job or your business or whatever you're doing, I need you to actually find a way to grow your self-worth in line with that. Don't build your self-worth on what you're doing. Have some self-respect on the side. Have an idea of who you are that is not tied to the thing that you're doing. Money can definitely change your lifestyle, but it should never define your value. Now, let's move on to the solution. How do you detach your self-worth from your career? The first thing is build an identity outside of your work. Have hobbies, cultivate relationships with people, create a life where you're not productive. Create an identity that has nothing to do with what you do for others. You volunteer at a shelter, you work in a soup kitchen, you do this and that for charity. That is not your identity. That's the thing you do. Volunteering at a shelter, a soup kitchen, working for charity is not your identity. That's something that you do, right? Your identity should never be something external. Identity is who you are at the core. Some people are in their 20s, their 30s, 40s, 50s, but deep down they have this need for validation or to impress others. You need to ask yourself, is this a job that I enjoy or is this something I do for validation? The second thing is separate your identity from your performance. You can fail at something without being a failure. You are you and your job is your job. You are not your job and your job is not you. Being good at your job does not make you a good person, just like being bad at your job does not make you a bad person. You are not your career. When you go out there and interact with people, start introducing yourself without your title. In discussion with people, resist that urge to impress people with your career. And in moments of discomfort, resist the urge to use your career to gain respect or leverage from people. Leave that career at work. Let people know you for who you are, not what you do. The next thing is start practicing self-worth without achievement. Learn to feel worthy even when you're doing nothing for people. If you're starting over or you lose a job or you're transitioning, I want you to to understand that you're just as valuable as when you had a job. Remind yourself that you matter simply by existing, not because of your job. You don't need anything to validate your existence. Your career is important, money is important, your goals are important, your ambition is important, but your career, your goals, your ambition should never be the foundation for your identity. Because if your self-worth is dependent on success, that means you're going to live your entire life terrified of failure. You are more than what you do, you're more than your title, you're more than your income. A career, simply put, is something that you do, not who you are. Alright guys, that's the end of this video. I hope you found it useful. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you guys in my next one, and thanks for watching.